particularly the participants, many of whom have come from abroad, and all are old friends, and had not the slightest hesitation in agreeing to come. Unfortunately, Arata Isasaki has had to bail out at the last minute. I'd also like to thank everybody who's written to me, Victoria and Nicholas. Most of the letters contained memories of Alvin, warts and all, and brought a very wry smile, if not a downright guffaw, to our breakfast table. I'm afraid I haven't replied to them all. By the time I got to the 203rd, other things intervened, and I had to give up for the time being. Many people have encouraged us in this venture and provided so much practical help, which has been invaluable. There are so many that I can't name them all here. We couldn't have done without any of them, any more than Alvin could have done without them when he was here. Alvin was a great man, and we've all been diminished by his unplanned exit. We have been enriched by recollections of his generosity, encouragement, pursuit of perfection, integrity, and love. This event is our way of thanking him. It will, we hope, be an opportunity to shuffle our thoughts around, be irritated, amused, and even inspired. Finally, I would like to acknowledge an enormous debt of gratitude to two people, and I shall get held for this later. I'm referring to Nicholas and Victoria. This celebration would not have been possible without them. As Alvin would have said, they've worked their asses off. Their courage, wit, loyalty, and strength have been an inspiration. So let's celebrate. Thank you.
As you probably understand from the announcement of the program for today, the sequence of lectures is very intentionally situated next to the exhibition next door or in the rest of the building, and it's supposed to be the most dignified possible tribute to Alvin, not just to Alvin as a person, but also to his life, but most of all to his work. And the work is probably what also appears in the theme called City. The city has at least two different sort of meaning here. It refers to Alvin's explicit love and preoccupation with the city, but I think, as you would already sort of understand also from the titles of lectures that are going to take place today afternoon, the city has a very different, much more enigmatic meaning. It refers to city rather as a metaphor, as a framework, or as an umbrella for something which I believe characterizes Alvin's style, and I would not hesitate to call it almost the alchemy of Alvin work, which to most of us was rather hidden and cryptic.
Sorry, can I interrupt? They can't hear in the soft room at the moment. Could you just hang on a second?
Ah. Gives me time to think what I wanted to say next. Polish my sword. It's intermediate technology. Perhaps questions? They can't hear in the other rooms, apparently. Somebody's sitting or standing on the wire. There's no sound. What do you suggest to do? Shall we wait?
Can you just wait?
Yeah, yeah. Sing a song, not me. The audience. Alchemy of Alvin's work related to the notion of city in a way that I think would touch also on his very sort of hidden and secret sort of style in which he was able to run this place, AA itself. The fascination that Alvin had about cities or for cities had to do with its overwhelming, enigmatic, and rather kind of unlimited power which was both extensive and intensive. The intensity was in them probably what mattered most or more to him. The intensity of the unpredictable, something which you can permanently keep discovering, and it's not very easy to say what is it really you're encountering. The field is indeterminate, but in its indeterminacy there is something which you can trace as a pattern, or I would say even as an order, and this invisible order seems to me something which may be almost a key to the very personal style that Alvin exercised. The fascination in the end, not with city for the city's sake, but rather with the kind of reality for which city itself stands as being the most concrete and the most powerful manifestation of that invisible, hidden, curious order that comes occasionally to visibility. And we who've been working with him and students who've been part of those years know very well how different it would be during the year, what I would call fascination with the anonymity of the year cycle, where nothing would be happening. Alvin would appear almost like a ghost in different corners of the building, and one would not know really what is really on the drawing boards or what is prepared for the last stage, until it came to the moment of exhibition when everything really came to the surface. And it was quite wonderful to see Alvin's face, waiting for that critical moment. I was very encouraged to see that this seemed to be a silent experience of other people too, particularly when it comes to things that were very close to his heart: drawings, projects, architectural work, competitions, but also books. And of course, in the very end, his catalogs or publications that he produced in the school. Nobody knew, perhaps not even people in the printing room, what is really coming out until the last moment when he was right, and would keep it secret. But it was not for the sake of secrecy. It was a fascination with the invisible and rather indeterminate that could be still altered and modified until the point when it becomes clear that something really worthwhile and good can come out of it and comes to full visibility. At that point, and I would stop at this moment, at this point I think Alvin came to his best. He would be very, very much waiting for that critical moment when the work, the piece is there, it's on the table or it's on the wall, and he would withdraw. And I think it was one of the most characteristic, one of the most beautiful moments and aspect of his personality, the moment of waiting and working for that particular point of culmination and moving away from it, withdrawing and continuing something else. I would only say that very much in a similar manner he would treat people. He would create opportunity for them in silence and as it were from the background, and would be absolutely delighted to see that they understood this hidden message and made something out of it. And this, of course, cannot be named, cannot be even identified. Only those who've been through that process know, and those who want to see it are welcome to see it. And I think part of it, rather important part, would be presented to you today in lectures. I think most of the people, I would say practically all of them, in one way or another, have been present to that alchemical process and benefited from it in their personal development, in their encouragement that they see from it, in their concrete work, winning competitions, getting their exhibition done, and so on, and so on, and so on. And at this point, this continuation, I would rather leave to those who speak. They can tell you more about it than I can myself. I'm very glad that the first person who's going to speak is John Hejduk, who can introduce this sequence of alchemical style of encounter and dialogue with AA, and particularly with Alvin, in a way that would be sufficiently, I think, sensitive and gentle to that very dimension that is so difficult otherwise to grasp. John.
First time in my life, I stayed away from my school last week for 7 days. One, as a teacher in special places, you're always drawn to this place, you know. I know Alvin was being always drawn to this place, as I am drawn to the school that I teach in. And I never took 7 days off, and I did. And I searched during that time what to gather up, what pieces, what thought. And I read and read and read books, publications, things. And it was like going to school those days. I was able to study. And in a deep way, there was an exercising going on about education, about life, and about cities. And I know London is a magnificent city, but I tell you, it simply is not the same anymore for me. It's like houses, wonderful old houses. People have lived in them, they have loved in them, they have chatted in them, they have whispered in them, and then they leave this house. And it's a strange moment, the moment of leaving the house that you have been in for many, many years, but with the knowledge that the next people to arrive will make that house their house. On the other hand, they can never ever erase a spirit of a place when something has been inculcated into it. And I think that is the achievement and love that was given by Alvin to this very remarkable place, and only could bring it to that kind of spirit from this remarkable man. I was going to show slides, and I don't want to show slides. I mean, I saw so many people bringing slides, boxes and boxes of slides. I said, no slides for me today. So I mean, there'll be slides for me today, but not now. And during this time, from books, from drawings, from articles, certain sounds emerge, and one was piecing, always piecing. And the word gather, I looked in the dictionary, English is marvelous. It's a marvelous language if you're able to find things. And I just want to read you a Reader's Digest, as a matter of fact, dictionary, not a very elegant dictionary, but about gather. The word gather is to bring together in one place or group, to accumulate. 2, to bring together from various places, sources. 3, to harvest or pick as crops, fruit. 4, to collect by picking out, culling, to select. 5, to accumulate or gain more and more and more. 6, this beautiful one, to clasp or enfold, to gather someone in one's arms. 7, to draw into folds as cloth on a thread. It's marvelous. Gathering in cloth. 8, to become aware of through deduction and observation. 9, to summon up or muster as one's energies for an effort. And 10, in bookbinding, to arrange consecutive order as pages of a book. And 11 is to come together and to assemble. A pleat or fold in cloth held by a thread passing through the folds. Gathering. And I looked up the words. School, they weren't inappropriate. Association was inappropriate. Honor was inappropriate somehow. Steadfast, these are all wonderful words. But gathering up of thoughts, of memories, of insights, of works, of words, of threads, of sorrows, of joys, of relationships, of immensities, and of the human condition. A sense of spirit. There are rare and sacred moments when a vision is realized which creates a sense of spirit influencing a cultural atmosphere that penetrates the heart, uplifting humanity. For this to occur, an igniting force is necessary. In our time, in architectural thought, and in profound intellectual accomplishment, Alvin Boyarsky was such a force, guiding every illuminating moment. Over 30 years, he fired the minds of young architects and of old ones too. The loss of Alvin is irreplaceable. Lost is lost. What Alvin did and what he conceived and nourished will always be with us. He gave us something magnificent and something mysterious. He gave us himself, wholeheartedly. With him, there was no holding back, only total giving, a gift. His object was to make our habitation better physically and intellectually, solid, strong. He searched out where angels feared to tread. He kept his promises. He was the enemy of mediocrity. His knowledge was vast, and he generously shared it. Outside of creating the best school of architecture, where young minds flourish, his creative thrust into the structures and the making of books and publications staggers the imagination How did he do it all? The Architectural Association was carefully, methodically, and lovingly cared for by Alvin. In fact, one might say that his arrival here saved it, transformed it, and irrevocably changed it into becoming the preeminent school of architecture of our time. Incomparable, bursting with energy and thought, Alvin brought an enthusiastic faculty, student body, and staff. A creative, energized ambiance was put into place. The comings and going at the AA was truly international. I think this was the first international architectural school in history. I mean, it's a curious thing. When Ward walked into the AA, it was like entering a turbo plant. The electricity flowed volumetrically. The AA became a school for some of the best architects around practicing today. Ideas flourished. One was so glad that it was happening, it kept the Cooper Union School of Architecture on its toes. During the early heady days, there were three educational places that formed an architectural triangle. The AA of London, the Institute of Architecture and Urban Studies of New York, and the Cooper Union School of Architecture. The cross-Atlantic fertilization was formidable, provoking an intellectually stimulating critique, which doesn't exist anymore. During this period, my friendship with Alvin deepened. It appears to me that Alvin Boyarsky simply should have been celebrated more by all of us. He certainly gave us cause to celebrate for. Through his acts, he made us happy. He did so many things that renewed our flagging spirits. He provided the wide umbrella so that many architects could work in a better, creative way. Most of all, he had a strong influence on how we see and how we think. I think the fabrication of books, in a way, was his first architectural love. I will always remember the way he held them gently and with deep reverence, something sacred, something immortal. He knew books survived. He knew they were the records of a civilization. He knew they had the uncanny ability to resurface and to renew. He knew they also gave pleasure and gave off magic. He kept us in anticipation and he kept us off center. He was at the outer circumference where there is more risk, yet the curvature is larger. I think Alvin felt better to be at the edge. One sees more there. The books and publications were produced by Alvin at the Architectural Association are precise and beautiful. Such document testaments as Lawrence's The Dilemma of Classicism is powerful, celebratory, and heart-filling. The last time we met, we exchanged books, as was our habit to do over many years. He smiled a smile, and he pulled out yet another book from his packet. I observed him carefully and knew he was about to reveal another prime publication. It was The Crystalline Housing the Airship. It was then his turn to observe me as I turned the pages. It was a ritual and it was good. What a privilege to know him. Somehow, the Lawrence book comes close to what I believe to be the quality and the strength of Alvin Boyarsky's thought. I sensed there to be a connection between the beliefs of the two men, their way of looking at things. Alvin spoke in clarity. I do not think he liked ambiguity in language. He appreciated the basic stuff of architecture. He built a major educational approach system, stone by stone, brick by brick. When an opening was needed, he provided for it and put in a window or a door, impeccably detailed. He liked the material of architecture. There was within him the special, very special combination of the pragmatist and of the visionary. In a way, he was a true Montrealer. He was a northerner. He understood the winds and the snow and the polarity of the cold and of fire. And he planned for the seasonal fluctuations. He was so pleased at the odor of tar hovering around the Lorentz book. I think he admired piano hinges. They worked so smoothly and did their job with a silent grace as he did. His place in the architectural dialogue of our time is pivotal, searching, deep, and secure. It is my hope that those he so unsparingly helped, supported, challenged to sustain the freedom of thought will continue to do so in his tradition and in his spirit. He touched my heart, and he touched my thought. I so miss him. I had come with slides, and I had come with statements, and Nicholas asked me to give titles to something, and I gave two titles. One was called The Social Contract, and the other was Durer's Obsession. And the social contract, as I see it, and I think as Alvin did, was the absolute passionate commitment to teaching. That was a generation that was involved really with teaching, not teaching as a means then to do their next step to whatever they have to do, right? You know, only focus for a short span. So the social contract is not a lawyer's contract. I believe that his teaching and his devotion to that institution simply sealed the social contract. The other title was Durer's Obsessions. And I studied the etchings of Durer for months upon months. And I wrote a series of, I think, 15 poems, and which I dedicate to Alvin, but I will not read them here. I will read one or two because they're too sad. And I think that they should be read silently in a certain way. And the other thing is, if I go on, I saw something also relative about building, about structure, about material, about stone, is from Adrian Stokes' Stones of Rimini. Marvelous books, right? Stone is the earth's crust. There's a condition in one's appreciation of sculpture when for deeper understanding one must look at the lands, at the mountains, at the valleys. The scale is too little organized for a single appraisal, but one must feel the omniscience of sculptural process when rain strikes a crag, or as the sea embraces rocks and leaves them wet, or when winds abrade them with sand. We must see what joints of the rock, frost, and glaciers have revealed. The weathering stone is omnipresent. Pavements, no less than pebbles, are polished and shifted. To this sculpture we owe the clean shape of hills and peaks, To the sculpture and the carving movements of plant and insect life, we owe the transition from rocks to subsoil, from subsoil to earth. Earth is decomposed rock. The stoniness of stone is but one aspect of its impression. The senses, hardly less than the intellect, can be aware that all materials, all elements are contained and concreted in stone. This is a strange revelation. I met Alvin Boyarsky in Elizabeth in Ithaca, Gloria and I guess 1958. But what interests me is the places where I met him. I met him in Ithaca. I met him in Chicago. I met him in London, and I met him in New York. But you know what? I only met him no more than a dozen times. And that struck me. In all those years. And that also brought me to the point of how we gather pieces. You know, we think in some kind of continuity, you know, that this person is here and the school is here and this is here. And if 12 to 15 times, if that. It's, so that was part of the revelation to me about that moment. How I can't even imagine how many hours. Few hours. When the angel alights on the sacred earth, its sword becomes heavy, anticipating the weight of future sins. He pushes Adam and Eve out towards ever more guilt. As the garden recedes, the angel evaporates, and the first snow falls on the expelled, rejected, beginning winter. The angel spoke a pregnant language in order that her fullness grew. She listened to its completeness and peered into lavender eyes. He looks back through the particles of sand and vaguely sees her contour enfolding. He hears her voice diminishing in sounds like the movement of the palms during a soft wind. We have a writer, a wonderful writer called Thomas Wolfe, not Tom Wolfe, Thomas Wolfe. And Thomas Wolfe wrote, Look Back, Look Homeward, Angel, and Of Time in a River, and I'm almost done. And I'll read this couple of paragraphs. Journey to the north. It was his train, and it had come to take him to the strange and secret heart of the great north that he had never known, but whose austere and lonely image, whose frozen heat and glacial fire and dark stern beauty had blazed in his vision since he was a child. For he had dreamed and hungered for the proud, unknown north, with that wild ecstasy, that intolerable and wordless joy of longing and desire. which only a southerner can feel, with a heart of fire, a brain possessed, a spirit haunted by the strange, secret, and unvisited magic of the proud North. He had always known that someday he should find it in his heart's hope, and his father's country, and lost but unforgotten half of his own soul, and take it for his own. Here was the passionate enigma of New England, felt. New England, with its harsh and stony soil, and its tragic and lonely beauty, its desolate rocky coast and its swarming fisheries, the white piled frozen bleakness of its winters, with the magnificent jewelry of its stars, the dark firewoods and the warm little white houses, at which it is impossible to look without thinking of hung bacon, hard cider, succulent bastings, and love's warm, white, and opulent flesh, always the buried heart, the sunken passion, the frozen heat. And then after the long, unendurable, hard-locked harshness of the frozen winter, the coming of spring is now like a lyrical cry, like a flicker of rain across a window glass, like the sudden and delicate noises of a spinet. The coming of spring, the ecstasies, and overnight the thump of wings, the burst of tender buds, the ripple and dance of the roughened water, and light of flowers, the sudden, fleeting, almost captured and exultant spring. There's an American poet by the name of Edward Snow. He's a young man, about 40, 42 years old, and he translated from the German Rilke's New Poems. And it's a wonderful book. It was produced by the North Point Press, which is a great press in America. And this is called The Angel and the Sundial. In the storm that swells across the strong cathedral, like some refuses endless thought, one suddenly feels more tenderly drawn to you by your smile. Smiling angel, feeling figure, your mouth fashioned with 100 mouths, are you not at all aware of how our hours slide off your full sundial, on which the day's entire sum, at once completely real, stands in deep equilibrium of all the hours, as if all hours were ripe and rich? What do you know, stone creature of our life? And is your face perhaps more blissful still when you hold your tablet out into the night? And the last poem, as you can see, is by Paul Celan. I can still see you, an echo that can be grouped towards an antenna. Words. On the ridge of parting, your face quietly shies. Your face quietly shies, when suddenly there is lamplight brightness inside me, just at the point where most painfully one says never.